Go for it.
Awesome. Let's see, I'm going to go around this way so I don't trip on these cords. I was going to tell a story later on, but I'll just go ahead and tell it now. He was talking about writing on boards. When we remodeled the food bank building that we're in now, we actually, Libby was a part of this too. We wrote on all the framing of the doors, and we wrote prayers, our favorite scriptures. We did, some of them are songs from church days, and all kinds of things to pray over the facility that would feed so many people in the future. So, I don't think it's a bad idea as long as they're face down. Nobody can see our prayers. They're just all up underneath there. There's very few people that actually know that there are prayers and hymns and scripture written on our walls at the food bank. But now y'all are some of those folks. Well, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Kevin, I'm going to move your stuff. And while I'm saying thank you, I also want to mention that Libby Seftar serves on our board of directors, so thank you for being here and supporting us. You're a groupie. I'll take it. Tim Riggs on the back row, wave at him, Tim. Tim is our Chief Operations Officer at the food bank, and so we're grateful that you're here as well. And, Tommy's been on our Bridge Bash Task Force. If you've volunteered in any way at the food bank, just raise your hand for a second. Yeah, so a lot of y'all have been involved in all kinds of different things. And we are grateful for that, and we're grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight with you. So, first things first, let's just take a glance at what we'll talk about tonight. One of the things that I wanted to do as I was preparing for this is to really try to describe to you who Alice Ayers was and what shapes someone who would do such amazing things to be a person who would be the founder of the Food Bank of North Central Arkansas. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit. We'll talk about the historic floodings that happened in 1982. That was the reason that the food bank started our work, and we'll visit about that. When Alice started that, she did that as a soup kitchen. And so the next part is we'll take a jog down memory lane for a little bit, and we'll look at the progression from soup kitchen to the food bank that we are today. We'll also take a look at a number of different leaders, influential folks that helped with the food bank along the way, not just volunteers, but also some of the CEOs that were in that position between Alice and myself. And then finally, we'll take a look at some of the things that we're working on and trying to accomplish today. All right, so let's start with Alice though. Alice was born on June 7th, 1929, and that was 144 days before Black Tuesday, just to give you some perspective. She was born in Russell, Kansas. Really interesting to know, Russell, Kansas is also the birthplace of Senator Bob Dole and the childhood home of Senator Arnold Specter. And Russell came into kind of national attention in the mid-90s when both of those men ran for president. It's kind of cool. The infamous stock market crash that silenced the roaring 20s and was the catalyst for the Great Depression accompanied her birth. And also that same year, Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born. 1929 was the first year for the Academy Awards, and Wings, a silent picture, won Best Motion Picture. If you look at that, there's also two versions of that. It was released in 1927 and in 1929. Interesting enough, it won that first motion picture. The Museum of Modern Art opened in New York City. Heather, you'll be excited to know this. Car radios were introduced for the first time. And the Graf Zeppelin airship made the first trip around the world that year. Pretty cool stuff. There's no doubt in my mind that significant national and world events helped to shape Miss Alice's life and shape the legacy that she would leave as well. Really quickly, I'm going to go through the decades of her life. In the 30s, she saw the Great Depression, Roosevelt's New Deal, and the Dust Bowl droughts. In the 1940s, it was World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the birth of the United Nations, and the beginning of the Cold War. In the 1950s, the Korean War, Brown versus Board of Education, the polio vaccine was introduced, and then in 1960s, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Vietnam War, and the Apollo 11 moon landing that happened. In the 70s, I came along, so I get to say we saw now. But in the 1970s, we saw Watergate, we saw Roe v. Wade, and the Iran hostage crisis. Personal computers started finally landing in our homes in the 1980s. Chernobyl disaster happened, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then in the 90s, we have the Soviet Union collapsing, the Gulf War happens, and apartheid ends in South Africa. Now, the juxtaposition of world events across her lifetime allowed Miss Alice to see some of the worst and some of the best of humanity. She easily could have walked away jaded, but she chose a different path. And as someone that knew Miss Alice, I can say without hesitation that she was a strong woman. She was determined. She was caring. And even though she was short in stature, that lady demanded a lot of respect. When I was a kid, and then as a teenager, and even as a young adult, bringing groups of church youth groups back to do mission work at the Norfolk Community Care Program, is what it was called at the time. We would stop for lunch or dinner, and often, almost always, we would have a prayer. Maybe she read scripture to us, or maybe she would do a short devotional. But every time, we'd circle up like you would to say a prayer or a blessing over the meal. And before we get to hold hands, she'd say, "Now boys, take off your caps." "Yes, ma'am." And then she put out her hand, and she'd go around the circle like this, and she'd say, "And if you got any gum or candy in your mouth, spit it out." And boy, we did. We put it right there in her hand. Showing reverence to God, showing reverence to her God's scriptures, and showing reverence for the power of prayer was central to who Miss Alice was. And I learned that firsthand. And it is really cool to be able to stand before you and tell you the incredible impact that a lady like Alice Ayers had on my life. And I'm just one of the people that she affected. It's really, really one of the honors of my life to be able to say that. So, before I get all sappy, I'm going to get back over here and push a button. Alice died suddenly in a car crash north of Pineville. She was found in a ravine by the Baxter County Sheriff's helicopter on December the 16th, 1999. Ironically, that's my birthday. I was 28 years old. Heather and I were about to go to New York City. You were not 5. Heather and I were about to go to New York City for the millennium just a couple of weeks after that. Alice's obituary stated that she was known for saying, "The Bible says that the poor will always be with you, but it doesn't say anything about them having to be hungry." Let that settle in with you for a little bit. The Bible says the poor will always be with you, but it doesn't say anything about them having to be hungry. Alice was a mentor to me growing up and into my young adult years, but she didn't do it alone. My grandma Knight, Irene Jeffrey, Alice Grissom, Alice King, Roger Carlson, Belle and O.C. Simpson, those are just a few of the names of the many folks that served alongside Alice. As a child, I remember going to the food bank and volunteering with Grandma Knight. And as a teenager, I remember moving food at the food bank from the downstairs of the old school buildings in Norfolk to the upstairs. I couldn't find this clipping from the Baxter Bulletin. We have it somewhere, but I couldn't put my hands on it. But there's a picture of me and a bunch of other kids from Fairview United Methodist Church out in Buford. And we'd gone down there, and under the picture it says, something like, group of teenagers moved tons of food for the food bank. And man, we did. Now, we could have gone out the front door of the basement and down the long length of that school building to walk up the hill and back around where we could have come back in with that food upstairs. But instead, she let us cut a hole in the ceiling, or the floor, I guess, whichever way you'd like to think about it. So we cut this hole through the ceiling or the floor, and we had these conveyor belt, there's no belt, it's just rollers. But this conveyor system, it looked like a ladder going up through that hole. And I stood at the bottom and I flinged cases of corn and cases of green beans and whatever it was up those rollers. And Jerry Keller and Lance Mingy were up on top, and they were catching them as I'd throw them. And then they'd hand them off to someone else in our youth group, and they would stack that on a pallet upstairs. And that's how we moved that food that day. It was quite an undertaking, and I'm sure the adults in the room wondered if we were going to kill each other throwing boxes of food up that ladder, if you will, but that's what we did. I also remember bringing lots of youth groups for mission trip to the food bank, because, who wouldn't want to bring a group of kids to Mountain Home in Norfolk area, spend a week doing mission trip, and then you could go to Branson or go to the lake or go canoeing or hiking, all these great things that we have around the community. So that's what we did. In 1991, the students in my youth program at Sequoia United Methodist Church in Fayetteville were the ones that came. That was our first trip, as an adult at least. I was 19. I have no idea why they let me be in charge of their youth program, but they did. And Roger Beal and I came over here. He was our pastor, and we worked with these group of kids to work on houses and work at the food bank for that week. The kids had chosen a theme called Change the World. And I think that's because there was a song that Michael W. Smith had out that said, the name of it was Go Change the World. But at any rate, they had the song. Years later, when I started working at the food bank, Joe Wilson and I were going through some old papers and trying to make sure we knew history and trying to see what we needed to keep and what we needed to throw away and those kind of things. And we came across a letter from Aaron. Aaron was one of the students on that trip, and it was addressed to Miss Alice. Aaron had gotten home from that first mission trip experience, and she wrote a letter to Miss Alice saying, thank you for letting her come and spend the week in Norfolk and do the work that we did. And she talks about how it will forever change her life. This is a picture of Miss Aaron and her family, and I can't help but think that this young lady is passing on to these kids some of the great lessons that she learned along the way working at the food bank. And that's just really cool to me. I like to see that generational involvement and the way that we are able to pass off the things that we've learned in giving back to others, to our children and our grandchildren. At the time of her death, the White River Current mentioned that Alice had grown the food bank from a soup kitchen out of her home in response to the 1982 floods to an organization that served approximately 16 other nonprofit and faith-based organizations across 14 counties. Okay, so let's not forget. The catalyst that started the food bank, or the reason that we got started as a hunger relief organization, is the flooding that happened along the White and the Norfolk rivers, and then if you go upstream along the Buffalo River. It happened in December of 1982. In fact, it happened on the second and third day, and the reports that I can find show that some areas saw as much as 14 inches of rain. Now, I did see one report that said that some areas received as much as 18 inches of rain, but the majority of them say 14. And that was on ground that was already saturated from rain days and weeks before. I was 10 years old. I remember leaving the Christmas parade in Mountain Home and going to Calico Rock. By the way, that's a picture of the Calico Rock Bridge over the White River. I remember leaving the parade and going down to Calico Rock with our family, and there was a house or a barn, some kind of structure that was floating down toward us. The water finally crested in Calico Rock at 41.2 inches. And then if you go upriver, upstream, and you think about going up the White River and heading up the Buffalo River, you get all the way up to the Highway 14 bridge, the Dillard's Ferry. For years, we'd take groups of kids on canoe trips in the summer, and there was a log or a tree that was lodged up underneath that bridge. The water crested at the Highway 14 bridge during this flood at 65 feet. And if you can imagine being at either of these bridges and looking down and then realizing that your feet would have been wet if you were standing on that bridge, that was what it was like.
There was water flowing across that. There was guys out there trying to take the guardrails off. They're much braver than me.
Yeah, braver than me too. There was over $200 million worth of damage during that flood. That's estimated to be at today's, if it happened today, to be between 1.6 and 1.8 billion dollars with a B. Now, over the years, the food bank grew from a soup kitchen, that response to the disaster relief that we've been talking about, out of Miss Alice's home. By the way, she lived in a little mobile home, still there, at the intersection of 201 and Highway 5, just before you go across the bridge into Norfolk. So it grew from this soup kitchen out of Miss Alice's home and out of the back of her station wagon to become the Norfolk Community Care Program. That was a food pantry and thrift store designed to care for the folks in and around Norfolk. And then it became ultimately an affiliate member of Feeding America, but first it became a subsidiary of America's Second Harvest, which is just the predecessor body for Feeding America. And they did that work through the Ozark Food Harvest in Springfield. That's the food bank for the Springfield region, and it's still there today. In the early 2000s, the food bank joined 5 other food banks across the state of Arkansas to create the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. And they did that through funding from the Donald W. Reynolds Foundation. At that same time, as a part of that, they also changed their name from the Norfolk Community Care Program to the Food Bank of North Central Arkansas. Now, in addition to Alice Ayers, Jean Boyd and Linda Finley both served as executive directors of the food bank from 1999, after Miss Alice passed away, until 2011. I got to become the CEO in 2011, and during the past 15 years, I've seen the food bank grow from distributing about 500,000 pounds of food every year to distributing roughly 4.5 million pounds of food every year. Just before becoming CEO of the food bank, Stacy Shedd and Joe Wilson and I were asked by the board of directors to sit down and create a new mission and vision statement for the food bank. So we did that. And Stacy, with her design background, also picked colors for us, because that was what she was into, and she knew what was going to be good. We came up with these 2 statements. Our mission statement is building bridges from hunger to hope, and our vision statement is creating communities without hunger. Now, we also worked with the Donald W. Reynolds Foundation through a planning grant during that time. And that helped us come up with these statements. That helped us update our policies, our procedures, our employee manuals, our job descriptions, and it helped us birth the first Bridge Bash. That was a good time, Tommy. Over the years, Bridge Bash would become this, at that time, the largest single day event in Baxter County. We had to be very careful about how we said that because the fair actually had more people going to it, but it was over multiple days. So we would say this is the largest single day event in Baxter County. And it would also provide millions of meals to our neighbors in need. And I still to this day have people say to me, when are we going to do Bridge Bash again? We had a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. And so the answer is, boy, it sure was fun. In 2012, after more than a year of working together with Arkansas State University, Mountain Home, with the hospital, with Baxter Lab, a lot of other nonprofits and faith-based organizations, the food bank began what is known as our Move Up initiative at the food bank. It's focused on providing more than just food, to provide education and resources to the people that we serve. The initiative includes Cooking Matters, which is how to cook nutritiously on a budget, Shopping Matters, which is how to shop nutritiously on a budget. It also has a Getting Ahead class that is life skills. And then there's two components of it that are for community leaders, Bridges Out of Poverty, as well as poverty simulations. And those last two help those of us in leadership roles be better prepared to serve and be mentors and help encourage the people that are less fortunate in our communities. Since 2012, more than 11,000 individuals have graduated from our classes. And that is really cool to me because Peter Pikes would be really happy to know that number. Peter served on our board for several years and this was his baby. In 2019, we began remodeling what was the old Fred's building in Mountain Home. Now, this is one of the handful of rooms at the food bank in Norfolk, the old school buildings. You can see that we had to, every pallet that came in had to be cut in half or unloaded to be able to go up on the top shelf. And we had to fill all these rooms. Now, if the green beans were in the back corner, you had to pull all the food out, get the green beans, and then put all the food back in. It was treacherous. Tim, am I lying? You did a little bit of that, didn't you? Yeah. This is a picture of some of the insulation, one of the first projects that we did at the new building. And then this is a picture at the top of Janice Fletcher and Randy Ludwig and I signing the note to be able to get the money to make this project a go. On December the 10th, 2020, we held our grand opening in a facility that would more than triple our capacity for dry storage and cold storage. And yeah, you heard that right. That was also in the middle of COVID-19. During 2020, we had 9 record-breaking monthly food distributions. Our direct services, that's when myself, one of our staff, or one of our volunteers literally hand food to somebody or for their household. Our direct services increased 94% that year. Our indirect services, that's when the food bank distributes food to, say, the Mountain Home Food Basket, and then they distribute it to an individual or family. Our indirect services increased by 34% that year. Now, we distributed over 4.4 million pounds of food that year, and that was more than 1.5 million more than we had ever distributed in a year. And we were in the middle of a $2 million plus remodeling project. I have no idea how Tim and I are still alive after all that. Randy Ludwig oversaw that project as the board president that year, remodeling the building, and thank goodness he did, because we absolutely needed his expertise and the countless hours that he spent at the food bank making that project go. Today, the food bank serves 9 north central Arkansas counties: Baxter, Boone, Marion, Newton, Searcy, Sharp, and Stone. I probably forgot Fulton and Izzard in that list, I think. So if you're counting and I got to 9, we're good. We serve alongside 63 other nonprofit organizations or faith-based organizations We refer to them as our partner hunger relief organizations, and they are soup kitchens and backpack programs and shelters, school and community food pantries, summer and after school meal programs for kids, and senior centers as well. Today we have an annual budget of $2 million, and we distribute approximately 4.5 million pounds of food every year. And that provides, for perspective, 3,750,000 meals. Because sometimes it's hard to think about, well, it's still hard to think about 3 million meals, but still a little easier than pounds that way. We live in a state with the highest rate of food insecurity in the nation. 1 in 4 of our children are food insecure. To help you understand what that means, that's like having 5 children in every classroom in our schools who are food insecure. 1 in 5 people in Arkansas, that's our children and our grandparents, and it's also our working age families. 1 in 5 of all of our population is at risk of not knowing where their next meal will come from. And one of the 9 counties that we serve, Searcy County, has the second highest rate of food insecurity per county in the state of Arkansas. While these hunger and poverty statistics are overwhelming, the food bank today stays focused on our mission of building bridges from hunger to hope. Here's just a handful of the ways. We are honored to be able to coordinate the Mountain Home Farmers Market. We have about 150 vendors each year that participate in that market with us. It's sponsored by Jack's Package Store and Farmers and Merchants Bank. We do it in partnership with the City of Mountain Home. We have an estimated $2 million economic impact that comes through this project alone to our community. We have approximately 5 acres of hunger gardens at the food bank and at Cooper Park, and it's where we grow over 20,000 pounds of fresh produce each year. This year we've already planted and harvested over 6,000 cabbages, and we have other plants that are in the ground. We have 44 fruit trees, 19 raised beds, 5 beehives, a compost station, a couple of pavilions and some tables and benches, and we're about to start construction on a 30 by 70 greenhouse in the coming days. Really cool project. We rescue over 800,000 pounds of food each year that otherwise would be thrown away from local retailers like Walmart, Dollar General, Aldi, Casey's, Parks, and Town and Country. And then we are the sponsor for 5 different federal programs, federal hunger relief programs. The first is called the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and you probably heard it mostly, more commonly called to as commodities. Commodities account for about 1.5 million pounds of the food we distribute each year. We also have a commodity supplemental food program. We refer to that as our senior box. We pack almost 1,400 of these boxes each month. They're about 30 pounds-ish. Tim's in the room, so I gotta say ish at the end of that, right? And that accounts for about 500,000 pounds of food of our distribution each year. Then we do the summer and after school meal programs. They're called CACFP and SFP, Summer Food Service Program, where we have meal sites scattered out throughout our service area, and we distribute some 30,000 meals to children each year through those programs alone. I think I went too far. Or maybe I just missed, I've got them out of order here. We also have the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. That's a coupon book. So if you're over the age of 60 and you qualify for the income guidelines, you can get a $50 book of coupons, 10 $5 coupons to be spent at a farmer's market, and you have to buy fresh produce with it. It's a $43,000 grant annually that we get, and all of that money goes into the hands of senior citizens that need it most, and then that goes to the local farmers, and all of that helps the seniors and the farmers and the local economy all along the way. We also have a mobile food pantry where we serve about 500 families each month. The mobile pantry starts in Norfolk on the second Wednesday. Then later that day, that same day, we're over in Gassville. Then we go to Jasper on the third Wednesday of the month and Harrison on the third Friday of the month. You're gonna wonder what in the world I've got truckloads up here for. I'll get there, I promise. Our thrift store in Norfolk provides enough money each year to raises enough money each year to provide about 500,000 meals. And 500,000 meals is kind of like those other numbers, so I thought, here's how you could look at that. That's about a little over 12 semi-loads of food that's produced through our thrift store alone, which is really amazing when you think about maybe donating the things you no longer want, or going in and buying someone else's treasure, making your treasure out of the things that was someone else's giveaway. We thrive on 20,000 hours of volunteer service. Last year alone, that saved the food bank about $500,000 in donations that we otherwise would have had to spend on staffing. We have a direct delivery program and a direct distribution program. Our direct delivery program delivers food to Harrison, Marshall, and Ash Flat, or Highland. And basically all the food pantries come closer and not have to spend their time and their money coming all the way to the food bank. We also have a direct distribution program where we take food directly to the food pantries themselves and deliver it where they don't have to go anywhere. Our theory there is that we want to make sure that the folks in local food pantries across north central Arkansas are spending their time, their money, and their resources and energy on caring for their neighbors and not driving across the counties to pick up food. We provide SNAP and WIC outreach. We've just instituted this program. In fact, part of our team was doing a training on it today, but you can now text food to 74544, and in about 3 minutes, you'll answer a handful of questions by text, and it will tell you whether you probably qualify for SNAP or not. And then they're able to set up an appointment by text to meet with one of our team members or a team member from the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, who will guide them through the process of filling out their application, but they don't stop there. Then they follow up with them to make sure that they got all the documents gathered that they needed, that they went to their appointment or they received their phone call appointment, and they walk them through the whole process until they're able to say, yes, I've received my SNAP benefits. Really a great new offering that we have. As we look ahead to what's in the future for us at the food bank, we're going to begin strategic planning this summer and fall through what's called our Nourishing Our Future initiative. And we're already exploring a whole list of different ways for growth, as well as for opportunities for us to serve. We're looking at meat processing. Tink has been volunteering and working on that with us. We're looking at food locker distribution centers, expanding neighbor resources and services hub through a partnership with the 100 Families initiative, and also through a partnership with Save the Children. We're looking to grow our hunger endowment through the Arkansas Community Foundation. And we're looking at a program called Food is Medicine to help people make sure that they get the food they need, the right kinds of food for nutrition needs, so that they can stay out of the hospital and not have readmissions happening. We're looking at expanding our childhood hunger initiatives, our hunger gardens, and our disaster relief programs. At the Food Bank of North Central Arkansas, we believe that communities can solve their own problems. And we're grateful for the many partnerships that we have with y'all and with so many other organizations and people across North Central Arkansas and our state that help us continually build bridges from hunger to hope. Thank you for the opportunity to be here for tonight with y'all, and I'll be glad to answer a question or two if you have one. Yes, sir.
Frequently you hear that the food bank provides, like for a small amount, like $1, so many meals. How's that calculated?
Yeah, so let me tell you what the number is. For every $1 that is donated to the food bank, we're able to provide 7 meals. And the way that happens, the easiest way for me to explain it is we've got sweet potato farmer, and do you know what county or what town he's in, Tim? Scott, Arkansas. And he'll call Tim and he'll say, I've got a load of sweet potatoes for you. You don't charge us for the sweet potatoes, but we have to put a truck underneath it and get it up here. So instead of spending $30,000 to $40,000 on a semi-load of sweet potatoes, we can spend $3,000 or $4,000 on getting that load of sweet potatoes here. And that's basically the way we do it. But you'll also remember that I said 800,000 pounds of our food is donated to us through retail donation. We're rescuing that before it goes to the trash. We're growing 20 to 30,000 pounds in our hunger gardens. We have federal programs that are a large amount of the food and where the food's donated as well. Sir?
This is not a question, this is a fun time. Back in the day, we had Stand for Hope on the bridge in Cotter, and we would write out the word hope, and then we'd stand on it, and then somebody would come over and take a photograph of us, and we'd post that, and it was more fun than a barrel of monkeys. Now, we're down there one time, and KTLO was there, we had a speaker on the side of the bridge, and the speaker got blown over by the famous
Helicopter.
somebody in town. But
Helicopter.
anyway, we had some good excitement there. Anyway.
I'll never forget him going underneath the bridge
Yes.
and flying up. That's when the speaker went off. Like, oh my word, he just flew under the bridge.
Try being the guy that had to call him to tell him you couldn't do that anymore. You don't really tell Mr. Magnus what to do. He gave me a hard time that day, but he said he wouldn't. I don't think he did
It's
after
pretty
that.
scary.
That was just so much fun. We'd stand up there and do that, but then we had to get everybody down to the park. And we had 50 million golf carts and every other way to get them down there, and the guys were, anyway, it was,
Finally, we
just
just
bring
moved
back
it to the
great
park.
memories.
Yeah, finally we just moved it down there.
Come
Y'all have any
back
other
through it.
questions?
Then you would move it to ASU.
Yeah. And thankfully, we moved it to ASU that year because that's the first and only year that it rained, and we were able to move inside to the shed, yeah.
Yeah, cause I was driving the golf cart, so I know it was raining.
Yeah. Tim,
Thank you, Jeff, for everything you've done. Man,
Yeah, great
that's a
job.
great program.
well, we're excited to be a part of it. The blessing of Tim and I's life, we've got a great team of people there, staff and volunteers and donors and, people that pray for us. And, I heard a quote last week at a church conference in Hot Springs, and they said, we don't pray for great things, for greater things. Prayer is the greater thing. And I said, wow, that's amazing. That's a good quote, because here's the deal. At the end of the day, we think, oh, my body's wore out and I can't work and lift the boxes of food or do the help that's needed. Or maybe I don't have enough money for my own food or my own family's, care for my own family, but I can pray. And it's like almost we say it like prayer is the last thing on the list, the least of what we can do, but it's the greater thing that we can do. So for those of you that donate, for those of you that volunteer, for those of you that keep us in your prayers, thank you. We need all of that. We appreciate y'all. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
I noticed the American Legion has engraved into their wood, they're carved into wood, it says that the Girl Scouts of America, or Girl Scouts of Arkansas, assist with their gardens. But when I talked to them about it, they said they actually hadn't in years, many decades. But I wonder how much you help, like youth organizations, like Girl Scouts become more involved in gardening, maybe volunteering, because I think there are 4 main volunteers that did all of that gardening work that.
So we have lots of volunteers that work in that program, and student groups are vital to what we do. Our student groups give us well over 2,000 hours, not 2,000, that's just in terms of a small part of them. Let's just say thousands of hours of volunteer time a year. We have an internship program with Mountain Home High School where we actually have 2 students every year who come in and volunteer, and they get a scholarship. So we're promoting volunteerism, but we're also promoting their higher education. Last week we had a student group from Flower Mound, Texas, United Methodist Church, that came in and spent the day with us. They'd been doing mission work in Tennessee, and they stopped in Mountain Home, did mission work with us for the day, spent the night at the Methodist Church in town, and then went on to Flower Mound the next day. Viola, Cotter, Mountain Home Schools, all of them are involved in the work that we do. Keystone, program at the junior high comes in 2 days every month, to volunteer with us. What we do could not be done if we did not have student volunteers.
How many paid employees do you have?
We have 11, but not, I was trying to think, about half or maybe a little less than half of that 11 are full-time and half or a little more are part-time.
That's a lot of work for that few people.
Yeah. It is. Kevin, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm gonna let you, I think you got some business to do or something, don't you?
Oh, I'm sure we can always do a little business.
Thank you, big guy.
Y'all take care. Thank you for the opportunity.